Okay. Thank you. So the first one I have says that over 12,000 Belgian students skipped school last week to participate in a march to protest government inaction on climate change. Do actions like these have any effect on government decisions? Anybody want to weigh in on that one?
I'll pick up on that. I think in terms of balancing the narrative, it's important to have strong voices out there, and strong voices from youth do make a difference. In terms of how far it penetrates, the absence of those voices results in some of what we're seeing in other parts of the country, or other parts of the world, I should say. The absence of voices saying that we need to pay attention to Indigenous rights, or the absence of voices saying that we need to pay attention to market-based solutions, whatever they are, towards climate change, results in the easy bumper sticker memes that the other side operates under that says you're just going, it's a paycheck to paycheck, forget about the long term, you want money in your pocket, work with us. So I think it's very important to have loud voices to counteract the loud voices on the other side. But as I said, in terms of constructive dialogue, we have to take those voices into a room where change happens. And those voices have to change in terms of volume and how do we work together collaboratively, knowing that we have various voices that we all have to work with. We have a global problem that's not a partisan problem, as Dianne pointed out.
Yes, I'm going to keep going. Okay, next question. And whoever wrote this one, I think you're one of my people because there's a pun written right in it, and it made me so happy. It says, the Guelph Coalition for Active Transportation agree that municipalities are where the rubber hits the road on climate change action. That's so great. Rubber hits the road. We hope some of that rubber is on a bike. So good. Great urban design, vision, and leadership is needed to encourage people to use alternatives like walking or biking instead of using their car for everyday tasks. So asking, what is your vision to solve the vital shift to better choices in the transportation sector?
Sure, I'll start from the municipal landscape. I mentioned it in sort of my opening remarks. We already have, I believe we have great support amongst council and amongst staff as well to really shift, always going to planning out communities around the car, that we need to start shifting things to around people. And it makes for a healthier, safer way for people to get around. And my commitment as the mayor is to actually really put this into action. And I've been talking about it during the budget process that we're in right now. And so I'm glad that we have sort of plans and policies, but it's really time that we have to invest in this stuff. And in some cases, it's going to make some people uncomfortable, but I think that's okay. I think we need to stop always catering to the vehicle and how it rules the day, and even parking and how parking just rules the day. And we need to start shifting things over to active transportation options, because when we give people choice on that maybe nice day where there are people that use an automobile, they can say, well, now I have the choice because of this separated bike path where it's safe for me to get to work. I'm going to choose to use this method for me to get to work today instead of always having to rely on this one. Without providing choice to people, I think we're doing a disservice to the community.
Just want to add a couple things on that. Is the mayor made a really good point. He said the word invest in active transportation. Do you know how much of the provincial transportation budget is dedicated to walking and cycling and those forms of infrastructure? Zero. Nothing. So that's why I've been advocating for at least like 5%, because it becomes very challenging for municipalities to make those kinds of investments because the province provides a lot of funding for transportation. If 0% of the transportation budget goes to things like walking and cycling. Luckily, some of the cap and trade money, when we still had cap and trade money, did go to support some of that. So like the bike lanes on Victoria, for instance, is an example of what a provincial investment can provide. And so it's one of the reasons, you know, I'm pushing, like, even if we have a deficit, it's not even, doesn't have to be new money. It could be just say, take the existing pie and give some to active transportation as an example.
And if I can add a little complexity to it, is the people from Fergus also still need transportation options. So the rural Canada needs to still be able to get to market and still needs to be able to get around their communities. So as we're replacing Ontario's cap and trade system with a rebate program that is rolling out through CRA this April, every family or every tax-paying family will have an annex in their tax return to check a box. We're trying to get rid of that step. But for now, your tax return, you'll be able to get, a family of two will get $307 back. There will be an additional rebate to farm families that are impacted by the fact that they still need to drive. So an urban strategy and a rural strategy have to work together. And we can't punish people because of where they're living in Canada. We need to transition them to the new fuels, but in the meantime, we have to make sure that they're economically viable and we don't gut the rural communities.
All right, one more thing. Oops, if this is working. Yes, hello. Is that for rural people drive more than urban people, lots more distances, and therefore more efficient vehicles make more difference for rural people.
Absolutely.
And also, don't forget, there's also carpooling. There's Faith in the Common Good has an initiative for carpooling to church. Especially if you're going long distances, go with other people. So anyway.
Awesome. Oh, this question is specifically directed to you, Dianne. It says, do you believe it's beneficial and realistic for the University of Guelph to divest its $38 million in the fossil fuel industry? And if so, what can students do if it doesn't happen?
Right. So I think there is a place for divestment, particularly of coal. I certainly have reached the point that I think making money from thermal coal that's used for heat, is just as bad as making money from slavery. It is just morally completely indefensible, and none of us should do it. We shouldn't do it at our personal level. We shouldn't do it in our pensions. We shouldn't do it in our endowments. It's immoral. It is just as immoral, well, as I say. And it also isn't a good way of making money. We saw lots and lots of people lose enormous amounts of money in coal in the last few years. So definitely coal is an important place to start. It's also, in terms of what students can do, asking questions is always good. There is, people are very responsive to what they hear, and the more they hear issues about, well, why are you doing this? It doesn't make financial sense, it's immoral. Pension funds in particular are important places to have these conversations, because pension funds know they have to invest for the long term. They have to pay out for 70 years, and over 70 years the world is going to change. So they are necessarily having to think more of the long term, and that's a good place to have the conversation. So ask the questions. Anyone who does have a participation in a pension plan, ask the trustees of the pension plan what they're doing about this. What are they doing to comply with the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosure? And there is the new report also from Sustainable Finance that the federal government has commissioned. There's lots of tools out there, but don't stop asking. Thank you.
As a note, there are quite a few places you can personally divest, and I know of one really well, but I don't want to do a big shout out for one company. So if someone wants to know where can you move some of your investments, I'm sure all of us could tell you of places to go. Come and find one of us. We could help you with your own personal divestment.
Right, and there's a group, Divest Waterloo, that I know helped hosted the group where I talked last week, and they've got lots of information about this as well.
Yes, fantastic. Okay, next question. How do you maintain hope in systemic action toward addressing climate change in the political context we are in right now in Ontario?
I guess I should start with that one, eh?
That's apropos, yes.
Yeah, I want to hear this.
So, you know what? I find hope in rooms like this. I find hope in the fact that over 60% of the people in Ontario voted for a political party that supports carbon pricing. I find hope in the fact that the federal government's coming in with the federal backstop to put a price on pollution. I find hope in the fact that, you know, all the Nobel leading economists on this say that that's the best way to take action. I find hope in the students who are speaking out. So it's really, this is where it's going to happen. I find hope in the green builders. I find hope in so many places. And I believe, and I'll just close on this, so it's for climate action in this province, it's clearly going to be a tough 3 years. That's why municipalities have to step up, and that's why I feel lucky to be from a place like Guelph, where we are stepping up. But I'll also say that I firmly believe that the people of Ontario are problem solvers, not problem deniers. And ultimately, the people of Ontario will cast judgment on a government that fails to take action on the biggest challenge and crisis we face.
So in the meantime, working together. And you know, we have to find ways through. I mean, the federal government is funding municipalities directly, funding the Community Energy Initiative updates, funding 24 buses here, funding the new fares and new bus stops, and trying to get our transit strategy going, and funding a transit strategy. So if you don't have a partner, you have to find a way to success. And not-for-profits, working with the places like Emerge and the not-for-profits that really can multiply money if we find the right way of moving forward together. So at the end of the day, business wants it, the people want it, there's certain politicians that don't, but good thing about democracy is that there are ways of making that work. You know, even if politicians say don't do it, you can find a way to do it.
Yep.
Okay, this one actually takes a bit of a shift, and I'm going to riff on it just a little. So the question says, there's been lots of talk tonight about improving physical or built infrastructure. Curious about investments in our natural infrastructure. So the question specifically talks to the City of Guelph, but I think it would be great to hear from Dianne Saxe first and then talk about natural infrastructure from there.
Right, so natural infrastructure, enormously important. We did put a report out in November about, brought to you by the letter W, water, wildlife, wilderness, woodlands, and wetlands. And we know that planting trees and investing in protecting our woodlands and wetlands, tremendously important in climate resilience, also some help in mitigating climate action, also providing places for the species that we share this province with to live in. Lots of good evidence that it is a very good and important thing to do, and it makes the place we live more beautiful and more healthy. So absolutely, we should do it. Lots of good economics for it, and certainly at the current moment, we're losing wetlands and woodlands over the province, and it looks as if we're going to lose more, and we need them badly. So if there's someplace that you love, stand up for it, protect it, we need it.
We have the Oceans Protection Act, so that's coming forward through C69. In the species at risk that we're investing in federally, looking at what we can do on water that crosses provincial boundaries to restore protections on water that we have clear jurisdiction over with Indigenous people or with the Government of Canada. So the Bill C69 is in the Senate now. We'll be seeing it in the next few weeks, I hope, and moving forward with some very, very progressive environmental protection as well as oceans species at risk. And another one is it's free to go to national parks now for kids. So Canada 150 was free for everybody. We do need to keep them sustainable, but it's still free for kids. So to get kids out to national parks to see the value of our natural heritage.
So I'm just going to quickly say that the places we love and the regulations that protect the places we love, in my opinion, is not red tape. And I'm so happy that the City of Guelph, Committee of the Whole, voted against Bill 66, which will be coming up for debate in the legislature, municipalities across the province. And that's Section 10 of Bill 66 would open the Greenbelt up for development, allow municipalities to overturn the Clean Water Act, the Oak Ridges Marine Protection Act, a whole bunch of the protections that, you know, protect the places we love. And so there seems to be a groundswell of people across the province and communities across Ontario that are standing up and saying, we have to protect the places we love. And you know, the current government seems to want to shrink the Greenbelt. I'm trying to expand the Greenbelt, and so one of the things I'm doing, I'll be putting forward a private members bill to protect the Paris-Galt moraine in the same way that a previous Conservative government, I've based my private members bill on Conservative legislation a previous Conservative government did in protecting the Oak Ridges moraine. And so, you know, I think that, you know, it's going to take all of us standing up and saying that protecting the places we love is vitally important and something that government has a sacred responsibility to deliver on.
So I'm really proud of the City of Guelph and again, staff and council really, and the community rallying around protection of our natural resources. And what we've done is, you know, whenever cities and, you know, mayors talk about infrastructure, it's always like, you know, it's a pipe in the ground, or it's a road, or it's a bridge, or something like that. And so often it can be easy to then forget about the green infrastructure, the trees. And I know when the three of us go out to the Rotary forest to plant the trees out there every year, all of us reiterate that what we're doing when we're planting this tree it is infrastructure. It needs to be defined as infrastructure. And so what's interesting is that cities, including the City of Guelph, are embedding in our corporate asset management plans as we're embarking on figuring out what needs to be fixed on maybe the roads and the bridges and the pipes and things like that. But we're including the green infrastructure in that definition and in that conversation as well. And it's not just, you know, the trees and our urban canopy, but also, you know, last year the City of Guelph redid a road, Eastview Road in Guelph, and we made like amphibian tunnels underneath it. And it's really cool. If you go to the guelph.ca website, we have a little camera, and you can actually see turtles going down their own little highway. So these are the things that the City of Guelph is doing to protect those things in our city, and we should all be collectively very proud of these little initiatives that we're doing to protect you know, our animal friends and our plant friends as well.
Okay, I think we have time for 2 more questions because I really like ending things when the schedule says we should. So the first one is, we live in a time when some governments deny that climate change is real or that it's a threat. How can we as students combat these issues?
Cool. You're ready?
Well, I mean, the short answer is speak up, never stop. We are fortunate in Ontario. We do not have a government that denies that climate change is real, and that's good because we can all see it's happening. But whether it's important or not is heavily dependent on what people hear from their constituents. And in the last election, a lot of people, the overwhelming discussion at the doorstep was not about climate change, it was about electricity prices. If what politicians hear at the door is that all the people care about is their pocketbooks, that's all they're going to think they need to deliver. Is that the most important thing to your future, to your kids' future? Well, if it isn't, then you have to have a different conversation. And we are again in an election year. You have new councils. They also need to know what they need to hear. They need to see you. They need to hear from you that this is what matters the most. And make us the dominant issue. Make this the dominant part of the conversation. It is the most important thing. It will affect your life more than anything else. So if you want to look after it, you have to speak up for it. And there's no substitute for everyone speaking up over and over. And students, you're articulate. You've got the facts. You know how to do research. You know how to present things. Use the skills you've learned. Be good persuasive voices. And give your parents hell if they don't speak up too.
Awesome.
And it's, I mean, and critical thinking. I mean, the echo chambers that are out there don't have a lot of critical thinking. It's the easiest thing to pass on, a meme that says something that kind of makes you feel good. But when you look at what actually has to be done and how do you measure it, you know, what's the data? We had one of the scientists from the Arctic addressed my youth council last week. We have youth from 14 to 25 that get together once a week, and they were really challenging him on the science that he was using and how does that measure up to what they're reading online. So And he was giving the scientific answers, and he was using critical thinking skills that they were picking up. So bring it back to the science, but one thing the University of Guelph does really well is cross-platform. You know, talk about it with the people studying sociology. What's psychopathic behavior look like? We might find an example. Compare and contrast. What's the literature saying? How do people come to these types of conclusions where it's okay to pass it on to the next generation? So cross-platform and really challenge us. And I'm glad that you've said talk to your politicians, because the most powerful thing we can ever say is starting a sentence with, I was talking to my constituents. And then it's not me, it's you.
And one other thing I would say, young people tend not to what?
Vote.
Vote, right? What's the most important thing for young people to do? Make sure that you and all of your colleagues vote. Make sure your representatives know you're going to vote, and that one of the key issues when you vote is going to be something you care about.
So I would just add a couple quick things. So one is speak out here in the university community. I think Guelph wants to be a sustainability leader, and it's been student activism over the years that has pushed Guelph to do that. And so compliment the university when it takes steps in that direction, and push the university to take more steps when it hasn't. I think you can come into my office or the mayor's office or the MP's office and push us, because Lloyd's right. It's so much easier if I can say my constituents are demanding this. My constituents are demanding this. And then the provincial context, I would say right now, those of you who particularly are from ridings that are currently represented by a conservative MPP, because it is a conservative majority government, push your MPP, because the current government caucus needs to hear that people want action.
That's good.
Very quickly, I'll just take a flip side approach to this question, and that is to speak up with encouragement when something is being done right.
There you go.
So I think too often, maybe leaders in these positions or leaders at the university or whatever, they're always hearing, you're not doing this, you're not doing that, how dare you do this, how dare you do that. And instead, an email or a pat in the back or a stop in the hallway to say, hey, I just heard that you guys did this. That's really good. Keep it up. And I think I would encourage everyone that we need a bit more of that in our society in general, just to be a bit more encouraging when something is done right. So I leave you with that as an option for young people to not forget about that too.
I want to get one more thing. And one more thing young people can do that is really important is show up, right? There's lots of meetings. There can be all candidates meetings, there can be committee meetings, there can be council meetings. Are you there? Even if you're there with your laptop. Are you there? Show up, be visible over and over again, because most of the time only a few people go to those meetings, and it's probably not you. If you want your voice heard, you got to be there.